9 strange symptoms on the body when you are almost at final awakening. As Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. If you've been experiencing unusual sensations in your body, tingling skin, unexplained fatigue, or sensitivity to light, it might not be illness, but evolution. These strange symptoms are not random. They are spiritual signals, guiding you toward your final awakening. In today's video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore 9 powerful signs that your soul is on the brink of transformation. Have you ever felt something you couldn't explain? Something beyond the physical? Let us know in the comments what symptoms you've experienced and how they've changed your life. This is your invitation to listen more deeply to your body and to your spirit, because the journey to awakening begins within. 1. Skin sensitivity and irritation. Clothing that once felt soft now scratches like sandpaper. A light breeze across your skin feels like a cold slap, and even subtle shifts in room temperature become oddly unbearable. You might think you're developing an allergy, or maybe you're just becoming more sensitive with age. But what if it's something much deeper? What if your body is speaking the language of the soul, signaling that something profound is unfolding beneath the surface? This strange discomfort isn't physical in origin, it's energetic. As your soul begins to awaken and your aura expands, your nervous system enters a recalibration process. It's not just skin deep, it's a whole body metamorphosis that marks your transition from unconscious existence to conscious embodiment. The body, after years of tolerating emotional suppression and spiritual disconnection, suddenly refuses to stay numb. And the skin, being the most external organ and the first line of interaction with the outer world, becomes the messenger of this change. This new hypersensitivity to fabric textures, to temperature, to friction, these are not signs of fragility, but evidence of energetic awakening. Your soul is shedding layers of heaviness that no longer align with your truth. The overstimulation you feel isn't about weakness, it's about clarity. You are now perceiving reality more truthfully. Every tag that scratches, every thread that clings, every wave of temperature that once went unnoticed, these now hit differently because your energy field is no longer dull or dense. It's alive, receptive, tuned in to frequencies that once bypassed your awareness. This is especially jarring for men who've built their identity around endurance, who've learned to override discomfort in pursuit of productivity and strength. But now, your soul demands presence, not performance. It asks you to feel, not to tolerate. The irritation is sacred. It's a boundary, a signal, a spiritual checkpoint reminding you that you're not who you used to be. In many ancient traditions, skin issues were never seen as merely dermatological. They were spiritual eruptions, surface manifestations of internal alchemy. In the same way, what you're experiencing now is your body aligning with your soul's demand for purity, for truth, for resonance. That shirt that suddenly feels unbearable. It's not about the material, it's about the energy it carries and your newfound inability to tolerate what doesn't match your vibration. As your aura grows more refined, your sensory system becomes more precise, filtering out what's energetically off or emotionally draining. The body isn't malfunctioning, it's finally working with your soul instead of against it. And this unity between flesh and spirit is the essence of true awakening. You're not becoming delicate, you're becoming precise. You're not growing weaker, you're becoming spiritually attuned. And while this skin sensitivity may seem like a small thing, it's actually a profound sign that your soul is stepping into its full expression. Your body is learning how to protect this new awareness, how to alert you when something is energetically off, and how to create boundaries, not just with people, but with energies, frequencies, and even environments. This is evolution, not allergy. This is the sacred discomfort that clears the path for deeper truth, richer presence, and unshakable spiritual strength. The man you were could wear any armor and carry any burden, but the man you are becoming knows that real power lies in sensitivity, because it's through sensitivity that the soul speaks loudest. Have you ever felt like your own skin is speaking to you, irritated not by fabric, but by energy? If you've experienced this shift, share your story in the comments so others know they're not alone. And if you're just beginning to notice these signs, comment, "I'm awakening," to affirm your journey and open the door to deeper spiritual awareness. 2. Body jerks, twitches, and pulses. You might be lying down, completely still, when suddenly your leg jerks or your shoulder twitches out of nowhere. Most people brush it off as a nerve misfire or just random tension, but in truth, it's something much deeper. These aren't just physical spasms. They are your body's way of releasing old, trapped energy. Carl Jung emphasized that the psyche and the body are inseparable, and as your soul moves closer to final awakening, your nervous system begins to discharge what it has stored for years: unprocessed emotions, hidden traumas, and survival mechanisms that no longer serve your spiritual path. These small, sudden movements are micro-releases of energetic trauma, like sparks escaping from an overcharged circuit. They're subtle, yet profound, signs that something sacred is being purged. Most people miss these clues because we live in a world that teaches us to distrust the body. We're told that everything must have a medical label or a logical explanation. But spiritual growth doesn't always follow logic. Sometimes it pulses up your spine as heat. Sometimes it trembles through your limbs as tingling. And other times, it shows up as unexplained physical jolts when you're resting. One man shared that every night, after just a few minutes of breath work, his left leg would twitch uncontrollably. Doctors found nothing wrong, but when he looked inward, he remembered how he used to suppress his emotions as a child to avoid punishment. That twitch wasn't random. It was his soul breaking free from years of emotional silence. Carl Jung taught that the body often carries what the mind refuses to face. As you approach the threshold of final awakening, your energetic system begins to detox. This might not feel graceful. It may feel strange, even overwhelming. But this is the body's sacred way of saying, "I'm ready to let go." Your nervous system is not malfunctioning, it's recalibrating. These odd physical symptoms are signs that you are no longer carrying what was never meant to be yours. You are no longer trapped in the frozen timeline of old stories. You are being rewired for truth, for presence, for a life aligned with your higher self. So don't fear the twitches, the pulses, or the inner vibrations that seem to have no cause. They are not symptoms of dysfunction. They are signs of transformation. Your body is not betraying you. It is liberating you. And while the world may never fully understand this language, your soul does. This is the wisdom of awakening etched into your muscles, nerves, and bones. This is the sacred unraveling before the rebirth. Listen closely. Trust your body. It remembers what your mind has forgotten, and it's finally ready to let it all go. 3. Sudden food rejection. Foods you once adored, coffee, meat, pizza, can suddenly taste wrong, feel heavy, or even make you nauseous. This isn't random or a passing phase. It's a profound sign that your body is no longer operating on the same frequency it once did. During final spiritual awakening, your physical vessel begins to reject anything that pulls your vibration downward. What you used to crave now feels like poison. Instead, you're drawn toward high-frequency nourishment of fresh fruits, raw vegetables, lemon water, herbal teas, simple grains, or even fasting. You may wake up craving a green apple instead of a croissant, or instinctively reach for turmeric tea over a soft drink. That's your soul guiding the body to align with its new frequency. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And when that inner awakening occurs, every system in your being responds, including the digestive one. Your taste buds shift. Your body becomes a radar for vibrational clarity. You're not just eating for survival anymore. You're eating for resonance. It's no longer about flavor or comfort. It's about energy, lightness, and alignment. The food you now choose either feeds your soul or fogs your spirit. You might feel strange around others, turning down food you once loved, or explaining your new habits. But this rejection is not rebellion. It's revelation. It's your spirit saying, "I cannot be weighed down anymore." You become sensitive to preservatives, additives, and artificial flavors, not out of fear, but because they disturb the inner stillness you've worked so hard to build. Your relationship with food becomes sacred, intentional, and deeply intuitive. And while some may mock the change, you'll feel in your bones that you are being pulled toward truth. Each bite either brings you closer to your spiritual center or away from it. What was once a meal is now a message. What was once indulgence is now interference. You are no longer feeding a body, you are fueling a soul. And the soul, once awakened, refuses to go back to sleep. If your body has suddenly started rejecting the foods you used to love, you're not alone. This video will help you understand why. If you're on this journey of spiritual alignment and crave deeper insight, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new message. 4. Joint heaviness and bone aches. Your knees feel like they're dragging ancient weight. Your spine hums with an ache that can't be explained, and your wrists and hips throb not from injury, not from exertion, but from something deeper, more mysterious. This isn't wear and tear. It's not aging. It's the soul stepping forward and shaking the very foundation of your being. When you're nearing your final spiritual awakening, your body begins to restructure itself from the inside out. The heaviness in your joints isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your bones, often overlooked, are not merely physical structures. In spiritual terms, they are sacred storage holding ancestral memories, emotional trauma, and karmic residues passed down through generations. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And in this phase, awakening begins not in the mind, but in the marrow. The ache signal that something ancient is being unearthed. Your nervous system may not know how to interpret it, but your soul does. It's not inflammation, it's initiation. Your knees may ache because they once knelt in silent submission, now rising to reclaim power. Your spine might feel burdened because it carried unspoken grief from family lines you barely know. Your hips, long weighed down by survival, now vibrate with the release of old identities. This is energetic surgery, and your bones are recalibrating. What you're experiencing is not illness, it's realignment. The soul is dissolving outdated frequencies lodged in the physical body. You are not just healing, you are becoming a vessel that can hold a higher voltage of truth. And that requires clearing everything that was never yours to begin with. The discomfort may intensify at night or when you're still, not because you're broken, but because stillness allows the soul to speak. The pain is sacred. It is memory rising through the skeleton like smoke from an old fire. Each throb, each wave of stiffness is a message. Pay attention. Release what no longer belongs. You are becoming something you've never been. Stretching may help. Rest may soothe. But only inner surrender will complete the transformation. You can't bypass this stage. The body is the final gate. And what it asks for is not treatment. It asks for reverence. Because in your aching joints, there is intelligence. In your stiff bones, there is encoded light. And through this strange heaviness, your soul is not just waking up, it is reclaiming its throne. 5. Tightness or heat in the solar plexus. There's a pressure that builds beneath your ribs, a heat, a tightening, like something is being twisted inside your stomach. It can strike without warning, leaving you breathless, anxious, maybe even panicked. But this isn't indigestion, and it's not just stress. It's a message, a signal from the deepest part of you. Your solar plexus, the core of your personal power, is awakening. And in doing so, it's unraveling everything your ego built to survive. Control, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and the belief that love must be earned through performance. Carl Jung believed that what we do not bring into consciousness will control our lives, and we will call it fate. This is that moment of confrontation. The heat you feel is the friction of two selves colliding, the one you were taught to be and the one you were born to become. This inner combustion is not random. It is energetic purging. As your soul rises, the outdated structures of identity begin to collapse. And it's not a peaceful unraveling. The ego fights to hold on. It sends signals of fear, trembles of panic, and waves of pressure to keep you tethered to the familiar. But the body knows. The body remembers who you really are. And so, the solar plexus is your energetic center of confidence and will begin to burn through the lies you've worn like armor. The discomfort is sacred. You're not sick. You're detoxing from illusion. Picture a woman who has lived her life trying to be everything for everyone, always smiling, always available, always agreeable. She starts a meditation practice, and suddenly she feels intense heat in her core, anxiety she's never known before. Her mind races, but her body refuses to relax. She thinks something is wrong, but nothing is. In fact, everything is finally becoming right. Her body is speaking a truth her mind refused to hear, that her identity has been shaped by the needs of others, that she has been shrinking herself to be loved. And now, as she reconnects with her inner voice, the solar plexus purges that distortion, releasing suppressed emotion, untangling the fear of rejection, and burning away the mask. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, not by becoming someone else, but by reclaiming all that we've disowned. That's what this tightening in your gut represents. It's not a symptom of weakness. It's a signal of return. The soul doesn't whisper, it stirs. And when the stirring becomes unbearable, it's often because the soul has had enough of waiting. Your body, in all its wisdom, begins the revolution first. The stomach tenses, the ribs feel heavy, the breath shallows not because something is wrong, but because something unconscious is rising to the surface. The need to be enough, to be accepted, to be safe through control, it all begins to melt under the light of awakening. Let yourself feel it. Don't suppress. Don't label. Don't rush to fix. This is not a moment to medicate. It is a moment to liberate. The lesson is simple, but powerful. When your solar plexus speaks, listen. Your spiritual evolution is not quiet. It's messy, raw, and at times overwhelming. But through this discomfort, you are being refined. You are burning through layers of survival to remember the truth of who you are. A sovereign being, whole and worthy beyond performance. The soul never forgets, only the ego does. But now, even the ego is starting to surrender. And that pressure in your stomach, that's not just energy shifting. That's you waking up. If this message resonates with your soul, repeat after me. I release control. I release fear. I trust the transformation unfolding within me. If you feel this truth deep in your solar plexus, like and subscribe to support the channel and stay connected for more powerful insights. 6. Temperature shifts, hot and cold sensations. Sudden sensations of heat flooding your chest or icy cold gripping your hands and feet for no apparent reason aren't accidents. They're spiritual signals from within. These are not symptoms of illness, but rather bioelectrical responses from your energy field being rearranged during a deep awakening process. Heat is a sign that your energy is being activated. It often shows up in your head, hands, or feet, as if your system is being lit from the inside. It means your chakras are opening, your spiritual awareness is rising, and dormant power within you is coming alive. On the other hand, coldness, especially in your extremities, signifies release. It's your body letting go of blocked emotions, trauma, and beliefs that no longer serve your path. This is energy leaving your field, making space for something higher. What you're experiencing isn't random, it's a rewiring. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And these sensations are often the body's way of processing that very expansion. The nervous system, finely tuned to your consciousness, begins to recalibrate itself. You may feel overwhelmed or even question your sanity, but you're not crazy, you're evolving. You might notice these temperature fluctuations intensify during prayer, meditation, or moments of solitude. That's because when your mind quiets down, your soul speaks up. Your body, the sacred instrument of your transformation, picks up these frequencies and reacts accordingly. Heat surges can feel like waves of truth rushing through you, burning away the false layers. Cold sweeps in like a cleansing wind, clearing what has overstayed its welcome. These aren't medical conditions. They're metaphysical transitions. Spiritual awakening doesn't just happen in your thoughts, it happens in your cells, your breath, your skin. You are becoming more sensitive because your energy is becoming more refined. Your soul is rising to the surface, and your body is trying to keep up. And even though it's uncomfortable, there is a deep intelligence in these symptoms. They are proof that healing is not always warm and gentle. Sometimes it's intense, raw, and undeniable. You are not malfunctioning. You are tuning into a higher frequency of life. You are being asked to trust what you feel, not just what you see. As Rumi once said, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. These temperature shifts are life living through you spiritual energy, reshaping the old you into someone capable of holding more love, more clarity, and more truth. This isn't a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. 7. Sudden waves of fatigue. Sudden waves of fatigue that strike without warning and vanish just as quickly are not signs of weakness. They are signals from your soul that deep internal transformation is underway. This isn't the kind of tiredness that comes from lack of sleep or physical exertion. It's a unique kind of exhaustion known as integration fatigue, the type that shows up when your spiritual system is downloading a higher frequency of consciousness. After moments of emotional release, spiritual realization, or deep inner reflection, the body shuts down, not because it's broken, but because it's being reprogrammed. It's like your inner operating system is upgrading silently in the background, and your energy gets redirected inward to support that recalibration. Just as a computer slows down when installing new software, your body slows so your soul can accelerate. This process is often disorienting because there's no logical cause. You weren't physically exerting yourself, yet suddenly you feel drained, even immobilized. That's because the soul doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in sensation. And when you're nearing the final stages of spiritual awakening, your nervous system becomes more sensitive, your body more honest, and your soul more demanding of alignment. These waves of fatigue are the body's way of saying, "Be still." Something greater is unfolding. They are checkpoints, quiet initiations into a new state of being where rest becomes sacred, not optional. This isn't laziness, it's a spiritual necessity. Many men, especially those conditioned to equate rest with weakness, struggle to accept this. But true growth doesn't always happen in the doing. It happens in the being, in the allowing. During these episodes, your physical body is shedding layers of emotional debris and outdated beliefs while absorbing new spiritual coding. This is why pushing through the fatigue only delays the transformation. The more you resist, the longer it lingers. But the moment you surrender, close your eyes, lie down, let go, you allow the energetic shift to take root. Your soul needs your body to rest so it can fully enter. These are not setbacks. These are alignments. Your cells are learning a new rhythm. Your mind is letting go of old narratives, and your entire energetic field is being recalibrated to hold more light, more clarity, more truth. And each time you honor this fatigue, instead of judging it, you strengthen your inner alignment and deepen your trust in the unseen work of your soul. As Carl Jung taught, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But sometimes that pain doesn't look like suffering. It looks like a nap in the middle of the day, a sudden stillness, an unexpected silence. That's when the soul whispers loudest. And if you're willing to listen, to pause when your body begs you to, you will find that the fatigue wasn't a breakdown, but a breakthrough in disguise. To honor your spiritual transformation and trust the process unfolding within you, declare your readiness to receive. Comment below, "I allow the upgrade," to affirm your healing and inspire others to embrace their inner shifts with grace. 8. Tingling, buzzing, crawling sensations. You may start to feel strange buzzing sensations along your spine, a tingling in your limbs, or even a crawling feeling beneath your skin. And while these symptoms may confuse or concern you at first, they are not medical anomalies. These are physical signs of spiritual energy awakening within your body. What you're experiencing is the activation of prana, or chi, as your energy centers begin to recalibrate and expand. This often happens in moments of stillness when you're meditating, lying down to rest, or even in the middle of a deep emotional release. Your nervous system, long accustomed to survival and suppression, is now learning to vibrate at a higher frequency, adjusting itself to accommodate the return of your soul's original essence. Carl Jung often spoke about the individuation process, where a person begins to integrate their unconscious into their conscious identity, and this energetic awakening is a core part of that transformation. This isn't just spiritual poetry. It's biology responding to the presence of the soul. In today's world, we are conditioned to intellectualize everything, to seek rational explanations. But when the body speaks through vibrations, warmth, or waves of energy, it is expressing truths that language cannot yet contain. A man once described sitting quietly after a painful breakup and feeling what he called a current of light move from the base of his spine to the crown of his head. He had no words for it, no belief system to explain it, but what followed was weeks of emotional clarity and an unshakable sense of inner peace. That was not coincidence, it was an initiation. These subtle vibrations are your body saying, "You are evolving now." This is the moment your soul begins to return from exile. The more you allow yourself to feel these sensations without fear, the more you begin to trust the intelligence of your own energy field. These awakenings often follow deep emotional shifts when you finally let go of people who drain you, when you grieve an identity that no longer fits, or when you choose truth over comfort. Your body reacts to spiritual breakthroughs with electrical softness, a language of light that needs no translation. Carl Jung reminds us that the path to wholeness is not paved with comfort, but confrontation. And the confrontation begins in your own nervous system as it rewires itself for sovereignty, not survival. The vibrations, the crawling, the buzzing are not symptoms of sickness, but signals of the sacred. They mark the return of forgotten parts of yourself that were once buried beneath trauma, fear, and societal programming. So when these sensations rise, welcome them. Your soul is not just waking up, it is reclaiming the body as its temple. 9. High-pitched ear ringing. You feel it again, that sudden high-pitched ringing in one ear, sharp, fleeting, and strangely timed. Not a sound from the outside world, but a frequency that seems to come from somewhere deep within. This is not a random glitch in your hearing, and it's not something to fear. It's a spiritual signal, a vibrational download, a moment where your soul receives information your conscious mind can't yet translate. These moments often arrive when you're on the brink of making an important decision, experiencing an emotional breakthrough, or standing in the middle of a powerful synchronicity. And just like Carl Jung said, there is no such thing as coincidence. That ringing is no accident. It is your biology reacting to the invisible layers of truth you are just beginning to perceive. Your body is a sacred instrument, and the ringing is a tuning, a subtle adjustment to bring you into harmony with a higher spiritual frequency. It's like the universe is gently nudging you, saying, "Listen, something is shifting." At times, it may feel like your nervous system is hypersensitive, like the energy around you is too loud, too intense, too real. That's because it is. When you're nearing your final awakening, your soul can no longer be separated from your body. The veil between physical and spiritual begins to dissolve, and you start to feel everything, especially energy that others don't notice. The ringing isn't just noise, it's an announcement. Something is arriving. Something is activating. Your spirit is decoding data that bypasses logic and touches the wisdom of your inner world. So many people dismiss it or numb it out, thinking it's a hearing issue or just stress. But if you've come this far in your spiritual path, you know better. You don't ignore the signs, you read them. You don't suppress the signals, you honor them. Every tone is a message, every vibration a calling. And if you pay attention closely, you'll start to notice patterns. What were you thinking about when it happened? What emotion was surfacing? What truth were you resisting? These tones arrive with purpose to awaken, to align, to guide. Your soul is evolving, and your body is catching up. Don't chase explanations in science when the answer lies in spirit. Don't be afraid to listen to what only the soul can hear. This is your tuning fork to the divine, your reminder that you're not going crazy, you're waking up. You are receiving instructions that go beyond words, and your sensitivity is a gift, not a flaw. The ringing isn't noise, it's initiation, and you are ready. Thank you for watching today's video. Remember, what may seem like strange or uncomfortable sensations in your body could actually be sacred signs of transformation. Your awakening is not just spiritual, it's physical, emotional, and deeply personal. Trust the process and listen to the subtle wisdom your body is trying to share with you. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with others who might be experiencing the same journey, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming insights into the deeper layers of your spiritual path. Why the empath's awakening is the narcissist's worst fear. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. This truth lies at the heart of today's message. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we dive deep into the soul's awakening. In this video, we explore why the empath's awakening is the narcissist's worst fear, and how reclaiming your emotional power is the beginning of a profound transformation. If you've ever felt like your sensitivity was a weakness, think again. It might just be your greatest strength. Are you ready to stop absorbing pain and start reflecting the truth? If this speaks to your journey, comment below. I am awakening to my true self. Let's grow together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soul-shifting wisdom. 1. Empathy was born from trauma, not choice. Empathy was not a gift handed out in peace. It was a weapon forged in chaos. The empath did not emerge from praise or protection, but from emotional minefields where the only safety came from feeling everything before it exploded. He learned to scan every room, decode every sigh, and carry burdens that weren't his, all in the name of love that felt conditional, fleeting, or entirely absent. that sensitivity people now praise, it began as a shield. It began as a way to survive a childhood where reading the mood meant avoiding pain. That soul, his soul, was not fragile, it was alert, alive, wired for survival. He became attuned, not out of desire, but out of necessity. And so, the gifts of compassion, intuition, and insight were not traits of privilege, but the visible remains of invisible wounds. People-pleasing wasn't his nature, it was his armor. In a world where conflict led to rejection, he chose silence. In a home where vulnerability was a trap, he chose performance. The empath, especially the male empath, learned to abandon parts of himself to be chosen by others. And the tragedy is, he was never truly chosen, only used, tolerated, or depended upon. He played the peacemaker, the fixer, the emotional sponge. But deep down, the soul kept record. And one day, that soul awakens not loudly, but with undeniable clarity. It stops asking for approval, stops chasing apologies, stops kneeling at the altar of false peace. This awakening is not a rebellion. It is a return to self-respect, a return to emotional integrity, a return to the parts of him that were buried under years of self-sacrifice. And that return terrifies the narcissist, because the empath no longer dances to the rhythm of their chaos. He no longer absorbs their projections, no longer flinches at their silence, no longer explains himself to soothe their discomfort. Instead, he mirrors. He holds up truth like a blade, not to hurt, but to reveal. He no longer pleads. He watches. He no longer fixes. He releases. And in this release, he becomes dangerous, not because he seeks revenge, but because he has nothing left to lose. The power dynamic collapses because it was always held up by his silence, his guilt, his willingness to bend. Now, he stands. Now, he speaks. Now, he sees. And in that clarity, the narcissist sees their worst fear, a soul they can no longer control. He is not angry. He is awake. He is not cruel. He is clean. The soul that once sought peace at any price now refuses to pay for what should have been free respect, honesty, reciprocity. This man, this empath, is not soft. He is sovereign, and sovereignty is spiritual armor. He has grieved the lost years, mourned the false love, and now walks not with bitterness, but with boundaries. His empathy still lives, but it is no longer a currency others can spend. It is a compass, pointing inward first. That is why the narcissist fears him. Not because he changed, but because he remembered who he was before he was told to forget. And that kind of soul, once awakened, cannot be manipulated, broken, or made small again. If you've ever realized that your empathy was shaped by survival, not by choice, share your story in the comments below. It might help someone feel less alone. And if this is a new insight for you, comment, "I'm beginning to understand," so we can heal and grow together. 2. The awakening begins with inner conflict and rage. When an empath stops pleasing others, what rises first is not peace, but sacred rage, a deep, soul-igniting fire that shakes everything they thought they were. It's the echo of years spent betraying their own truth to maintain fragile harmony, the grief of realizing they were never truly seen, only used, tolerated, or idealized for their ability to feel deeply. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And for the empath, this pain becomes the catalyst for awakening. That anger, raw, unexpected, and unfamiliar, is not a flaw. It is the soul reclaiming its rightful space. It is the collapse of the false self, the one that bowed to expectations and sacrificed authenticity for belonging. The empath was conditioned to feel the room before feeling themselves, to anticipate others' moods, to abandon their own boundaries in exchange for temporary safety. This survival tactic, taught in childhood, eventually becomes a prison in adulthood, especially in relationships with narcissists, those who feed off the light but offer no warmth in return. For years, the empath confuses being useful with being loved. They perform, give, and forgive until there's nothing left of their original self. But something sacred breaks open when the soul can no longer tolerate the lie. One day, without fanfare, the empath stops explaining their feelings. They stop absorbing guilt that was never theirs. They stop negotiating with manipulation. And in that quiet refusal, they become terrifying not because they're dangerous, but because they're free. A narcissist's greatest fear is not rejection, it's irrelevance. And when the empath no longer needs validation, the game ends. The mirror shatters. The emotional supply vanishes. The control dissolves. The empath, once so easily influenced, now sees clearly. They are no longer here to heal what didn't want to be healed. They are no longer available for the emotional chaos they didn't create. Take Sarah, for example, a woman who gave her entire being to a marriage that demanded her silence and praised her sacrifice. For over a decade, she became invisible in her own life, putting everyone first while quietly dying inside. But one morning, something ancient and undeniable moved in her. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply looked at herself and whispered, "No more." That whisper was the voice of her soul. She walked away, not in hatred, but in clarity. She reclaimed her name, her voice, her vision. And the man who once fed on her empathy, he panicked. Not because she attacked him, but because she no longer needed him. She no longer played the role. The narcissist had lost the stage, and with it, his power. Carl Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that is what Sarah did. That is what every empath does when they stop betraying themselves to preserve someone else's illusion. This journey is messy. It hurts. It confuses me. But every tear is the truth leaving the body. Every outburst is the psyche breaking chains. Every boundary is a declaration of self-worth. The empath doesn't become cold. They become sovereign. They don't become heartless. They become discerning. They don't seek revenge. They seek freedom. And the soul, once fragmented, begins to unify. This is not just healing. It is transformation. It is the beginning of living in alignment with the truth that was buried under the need to be loved. So when the rage comes, honor it. When the grief floods you, let it cleanse. When clarity dawns, don't run. Because your awakening is not your destruction. It is your return. And that return is what the narcissist never saw coming. Comment below. I am reclaiming my truth. If you're ready to honor the sacred rage and rise into your true self. And if this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and turn on the bell so you won't miss what's coming next. 3. The shadow and the wild self must be reclaimed. The empath's spiritual awakening doesn't begin in light. It begins in fire. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of memory. It begins the moment they turn inward and face the shadow they've been taught to fear. Their unmet needs, their unspoken anger, their buried desires, and the parts of themselves they silenced just to keep the peace. That shadow, is not evil. It is the truth. As Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The empath was never meant to live only as a healer or a giver. They were meant to be whole. But wholeness demands that they reclaim their wild self, the primal, intuitive, unapologetic force inside that never asked for permission to exist. This wild self doesn't negotiate with manipulation. It doesn't shrink for approval. It is not interested in being polite if politeness means betrayal of the soul. And so, the empath begins to say no, not out of cruelty, but out of sacred clarity. They stop explaining themselves to those who never tried to understand them. They stop absorbing pain and start reflecting truth. The boundaries they feared would push people away become the exact lines that draw their true power back. Their anger, once demonized, becomes holy, and it tells them where injustice lives. Their needs, once labeled selfish, become sacred. They tell them what kind of love is real. The moment the empath integrates these once rejected parts, something irreversible happens. They are no longer manipulatable. They see through guilt. They recognize gaslighting. They feel the subtle shifts in energy when someone's words don't match their intentions. And in that awareness, they stop participating in emotional theater. This is what terrifies the narcissist, not the empath's love, but their clarity. Because the narcissist thrived when the empath was fragmented. They fed off the empath's silence, their softness, their inability to choose themselves. But now, the empath no longer needs to be needed. They no longer chase approval because they have remembered who they are. And who they are is not weak. It is spiritual power, forged in silence, tested in betrayal, and resurrected through truth. As Jung also reminded us, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. The awakened empath chooses not to become bitter, but bold. Not to mirror pain, but to transcend it. They learn to walk away, not with hatred, but with dignity. Healing, for the empath, is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming truer. And truth does not tremble. The empath who reclaims their shadow becomes a force of nature, compassionate but boundaried, open but discerning, soft but not to be mistaken for weak. They hold space without being drained. They listen without losing themselves. They give without being devoured. This is not just emotional intelligence. It is spiritual sovereignty. It is the soul remembering that it was never here to be anyone's supply, savior, or scapegoat. It was here to awaken, to integrate, and to embody the kind of love that cannot be controlled. If you're ready to reclaim your wild self and honor the parts of you that were once silenced, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's rise into wholeness together. 4. Boundaries are not cruel. They are sacred. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you conscious. At first, it feels like betrayal, not because you're doing harm, but because those who fed off your silence are finally being denied access to your soul. The empath's awakening isn't loud, but it's seismic. He stops over-explaining, stops fixing what he didn't break, and stops shrinking himself to preserve fake peace. This shift confuses the people who once depended on his compliance because they mistook his kindness for permission and his silence for consent. But peace bought at the expense of truth is a poison that slowly kills the spirit. The moment an empath reclaims his truth, he doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone becomes a boundary. He's no longer at war with anyone, but he's also no longer at war with himself. He stops apologizing for his sensitivity and starts seeing it as a compass for his soul. The narcissist doesn't fear the empath's rage. They fear his detachment. They don't fear the argument, they fear being ignored. Because the moment the empath stops needing their validation, the narcissist loses their grip. Narcissists thrive on blurred lines and invisible contracts where the empath keeps giving in exchange for breadcrumbs of affection. But when the empath wakes up, he breaks the contract. He no longer entertains dysfunction. He simply exits the room, the relationship, the role. No anger, no fight, just a sacred removal of energy. And that quiet exit is more powerful than any confrontation. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of your entire being, the conscious, the unconscious, the shadow, and the soul. For the empath, individuation begins with one sacred word: no. No is no longer a wall, it's a form of self-respect. Boundaries are not rejection, they are selection. They're how you choose yourself without needing permission. And when you do, the world rearranges. Some people will fall away, not because you're hard to love, but because you're no longer easy to manipulate. Others will accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of being selfish. Let them. You are not responsible for their projections. You are responsible for your peace. A man who honors his boundaries becomes a man of depth, discernment, and direction. He stops bleeding for those who refuse to stop stabbing. He stops translating his soul into a language that pleases the broken. He no longer fears being misunderstood, because being at peace with himself means more than being liked by others. And so the empath rises not by force, but by frequency, not by revenge, but by remembrance of who he is. Every boundary he sets is a prayer to his future. Every time he says no to dysfunction, he's saying yes to his healing. Every time he walks away from chaos, he's walking toward clarity. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. Because when a man chooses his soul over his survival patterns, he becomes dangerous not to others, but to the systems that once fed on his silence. And in that space of quiet power, he is no longer a mirror for others, he becomes a flame. Are you ready to honor your truth and protect your peace? If so, comment below. I choose sacred boundaries to show your commitment to this powerful journey of self-love and transformation. 5. The body reflects the soul's burnout. Years of self-abandonment don't just vanish. They accumulate in the body like silent grief. The soul, tired of being ignored, starts to cry out through physical symptoms. The constant fatigue that no amount of rest can fix. The anxiety that appears without a clear cause. The mysterious illnesses that doctors struggle to explain. These are not random ailments. They are the body's final language when the soul has been silenced too long. Carl Jung taught that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. And in the life of the empath, this resistance often comes in the form of saying yes when every part of them is screaming no. The empath, trained by trauma and conditioned by survival, has lived too long in self-denial, bending to please, to soothe, to avoid conflict. But something begins to shift the moment they awaken to this pattern. A sacred rebellion takes root. They begin to withdraw their energy, to protect their emotional space, and to say no, not out of spite, but out of deep self-honor. And with that shift, healing begins. The chronic symptoms ease, breath deepens, tension melts. The body, once a battlefield, becomes a sanctuary. In today's world, you might see this unfold in a man who's always the reliable one, the emotional container for everyone else's chaos. For years, he's ignored his own exhaustion, brushed off his own pain. But then one day, he stops answering the calls that drain him. He sets limits. He takes time alone. He goes to therapy. And suddenly, the migraines reduce, the sleep returns, and he starts to feel something he hasn't in years: peace. This is not a coincidence. This is soul work. This is what happens when the inner world reclaims its right to exist. And this is what terrifies the narcissist, because the empath, once pliable and guilt-ridden, is now immovable. The old patterns of emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, gaslighting no longer work. The narcissist no longer has power, because the empath is no longer available. This is why the empath's awakening is the narcissist's worst fear. It's the end of control, the collapse of dependency, the rise of spiritual sovereignty. Carl Jung reminds us that the psyche will find expression, whether through dreams, projections, or illness. And when the empath stops repressing their truth, the whole system reorganizes. Boundaries form where guilt once lived. Power returns where exhaustion used to reign. The empath doesn't become cold or cruel, they become clear. They learn that compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. They understand that love without self-respect is not love, it's sacrifice. And so, each act of self-care becomes a ritual of healing. Each no is a vow to the soul. I will no longer abandon you. I will no longer hand over my peace to be accepted by those who never truly saw me. The body listens, and in return, it begins to repair. Muscles relax, breath flows, the immune system restores itself. It's not magic, it's alignment. The message is simple, but revolutionary. Burnout is not just a physical condition. It is a soul wound, a sign that something vital within you has been neglected for too long. The way out is not through pushing harder or numbing the pain, it's through reclaiming your truth. To all empaths who feel weary beyond words, this is your call to remember who you are. You are not here to be drained, to be used, or to play small for the comfort of others. You are here to live from the center of your soul. Let your body speak. Let your soul rise. Let the healing begin. Do you feel the truth in your body's cries? If this message resonates with you, affirm your healing journey in the comments. I honor my body. I reclaim my soul. 6. Authenticity attracts soul-aligned relationships. As the empath begins to reclaim their spiritual sovereignty, a quiet but undeniable revolution takes place within. They no longer see themselves as the fixer, the rescuer, or the emotional caretaker in everyone else's story. Instead, they awaken to the truth that their energy is sacred and their presence is powerful. The narcissist, who once thrived on their confusion and self-doubt, starts to lose their grip, not because of confrontation, but because the empath is no longer energetically accessible. They are no longer trying to earn love by overgiving or bending themselves to fit into someone else's broken mold. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And the empath has finally stepped into that privilege with courage and clarity. They no longer confuse adrenaline for love, chaos for passion, or attention for affection. Their nervous system is no longer addicted to emotional turbulence, and that shift alone terrifies those who used to control them through manipulation. and emotional high drama. Now, the empath gives from overflow, not from lack. Their love is no longer transactional. It flows from a place of wholeness, not woundedness. And because of that, everything changes. Relationships that were once built on power imbalances begin to collapse, while new connections rooted in soul alignment, emotional safety, and spiritual resonance begin to bloom. These are not relationships formed out of codependency or survival. They are built on mutual respect, truth, and shared growth. The empath begins to attract people who see them not as a resource to be used, but as a soul to be honored. And that shift in energy, that spiritual maturity, becomes a mirror that exposes the hollowness of the narcissist's illusions. The narcissist no longer has access to the empath's attention, emotions, or validation. And that loss of control is what they fear most, not because they loved the empath, but because they depended on their submission to feel powerful. The awakened empath becomes emotionally untouchable, not by building walls, but by standing in truth. Their silence becomes louder than their former explanations. Their peace becomes more powerful than their past apologies. They no longer feel the need to explain their worth or fight for their place. They simply embody it. And in that embodiment, they send a message to the universe. I am no longer available for dynamics that dishonor my soul. The narcissist may try to return, but the frequency has changed, and what once resonated no longer fits. This isn't revenge, it's alignment. It's not bitterness, it's boundaries. The empath doesn't need to prove anything anymore, because they've already remembered who they are. This is the spiritual consequence of healing, a complete redefinition of love, power, and presence. And for the narcissist, who thrives on unawareness, this awakening is terrifying, because once the empath sees the game, they no longer play it. Don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom on how embracing your authenticity leads to soul-aligned, nourishing relationships and the end of draining dynamics. 7. The empath evolves into an oracle and healer. When the empath stops betraying his own soul to maintain peace, something irreversible awakens inside him. Not a version of himself shaped by others' needs, but the emergence of a man who remembers who he truly is. No longer driven by obligation, he steps out of the role of emotional caretaker and into the role of a spiritual sovereign. His worth is no longer tied to how well he can fix, soothe, or save others. Instead, his presence begins to speak louder than words, not because he is trying to prove anything, but because his energy now carries the weight of truth. He evolves from being a sponge absorbing chaos, guilt, shame to a mirror that reflects clarity back into every room he enters. That mirror is terrifying to those who thrive on illusion, especially to the narcissist, who survives by feeding off the confusion and self-doubt of others. But the healed empath is no longer vulnerable to such games. He no longer gives his power away in the name of compassion. His silence becomes sacred, his gaze becomes piercing, and his detachment becomes a boundary sharper than any spoken no. He serves only when it aligns with his spirit, not when it is expected. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's exactly what's happening here. This is not rebellion. It is soul reclamation. The empath becomes the oracle, not because he predicts the future, but because he has the courage to sit still with what is. He holds space for truth, not chaos. He doesn't absorb the pain of others anymore. He reflects it with such compassion and clarity that it forces them to confront themselves. And this, more than anything, is the narcissist's worst fear. Someone who cannot be manipulated, seduced, or gaslit because they've done the inner work to know who they are. The empath becomes untouchable, not by building walls, but by embodying presence. He stops reacting. He stops explaining. He stops apologizing for his depth. His soul becomes the loudest thing in the room. His energy commands attention, not by force, but by the undeniable resonance of someone who is aligned with their inner truth. He walks away when things no longer honor him. He listens more than he speaks. He chooses peace over drama, solitude over chaos, and clarity over connection at any cost. He doesn't lose love. He redefines it. And in doing so, he becomes the healer, not because he tries to save anyone, but because he finally saves himself. That is spiritual individuation. That is the end of enmeshment and the beginning of empowered being. And once this shift occurs, there is no going back, because the man who chooses his soul over approval becomes the one thing the narcissist cannot control: free. To affirm your evolution into truth and healing, declare your commitment. Comment below. I serve from alignment to honor your journey and inspire others to step into their soul's purpose with clarity and strength. Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Wisdom. As we've explored, the empath's awakening is not just a quiet transformation. It's a seismic shift that dismantles the illusions narcissists depend on. When the empath stops absorbing the pain of others and starts reflecting truth, their power becomes undeniable. And that is what the narcissist fears most: not anger, not confrontation, but the clarity, sovereignty, and emotional independence of a fully awakened soul. If this message spoke to something deep within you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss another moment of insight and transformation. Until next time, stay grounded, stay awakened, and remember, your sensitivity is your strength.